Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new, my name is Julia, and in today's video, we are going to be discussing Black blogs and are they doing more harm than good to our community? I feel like that's a pretty obvious answer already, but basically, I just want to get into these Black blogs, specifically the Shade Room. I'm going to be focusing on the Shade Room today because I feel like that's the most well-known blog. I feel like most people know the Shade Room, and the Shade Room really is what started it all, and they have a very big impact and a huge digital footprint. So I really just want to get into the Shade Room and discuss the history, the positives, the negatives, and just kind of foster some dialogue and discourse. So in case anyone wants to know what a Black blog is, it's a media platform or website that focuses on news, stories, and issues relevant to the Black community, and they cover a wide range of topics such as culture, entertainment, and everyday life from the perspective of Black individuals. I just wanted to put that there just in case anyone is like, what's a Black blog? And that sounds divisive and blah, blah, blah. I just wanted to explain. So there you go. With all that being said, let's get into it. So the origins of the Shade Room. So the Shade Room was founded by Angelica Wandu, I'm so sorry if I mispronounced that, in March 2014. And this really kind of stemmed from her interest in poetry and poetry slams. She would go around the country doing poetry slams, and she also was really interested in being a rapper at one point. And so she was very much into lyricism and words. Even before she realized that she wanted to do a blog, she was always interested in words, you know? So that's kind of where that started. So Angelica's parents were first-generation Nigerian immigrants, and she had a very rough childhood, her and her 4 siblings. So Angelica's parents had a very horrible dynamic. Angelica's mother was the breadwinner in the family, and the father, was feeling very threatened by that, started getting incredibly abused, also started drinking a lot. And so essentially what ended up happening was Angelica's father murdered her mother in 1996. And from there, Angelica and her 4 siblings went into the foster care system.
The Nigerian culture, a man is supposed to be the breadwinner and he's supposed to provide. And, my mother was the breadwinner. My father had a hard time establishing himself out here. And as a result, he began to drink and then became abusive, and that led to him taking my mother, when I was 6 years old, so that's how we got into the foster care system.
And Angelica says that this environment fostered resilience in her. She got a lot of drive and desire to want to get out of the horrible situation that she grew up in. She really wanted to do better by herself and her 4 siblings. She just wanted to create a better life for everyone in the family and herself. And so she cites that this environment really fostered a lot of courage and resilience. And she also still had a connection to the Nigerian community, which she cites as being a very, powerful influence in her life, continuing her education and wanting to have this hard work ethic and drive, so she really cites all of her circumstances as something that propelled her to do more and greater. So Angelica was in accounting. She started in accounting throughout college, throughout her undergrad. I think she said that her cousin was interested in accounting, and so she just decided to go into it herself. She was working as a bookkeeper and trying to become a CPA. But while she was working as a bookkeeper and doing her accounting job, she was working on her writing. She was working on writing scripts. And so she ended up having a script go to Sundance. And because of that, she ended up losing her job because of Sundance, because she mentioned that she really wasn't the greatest employee. She really wasn't interested in, accounting at all. And she was more interested in her writing career. So it was kind of like you have to pick what you really want to do. Do you either want to do this with accounting, or do you want to be a writer? So her boss kind of gave her that ultimatum, and she decided to go with her heart, which was in writing. So she was unemployed. She was in LA. She got a grant from Sundance. So she won a $5,000 grant to continue writing, but she cited that was literally pennies. Like, you can barely make, ends meet on $5K. It went really quickly. And so she was beginning to get desperate to find work and to support herself. So she said that one of her friends suggested that she start her own media company because she was always updating her friends on the latest tea and things going on. And so her friend kind of jokingly said, you should start a media company. And then she was thinking, you know what? Maybe I should. Maybe I could. Maybe I actually could do this. She also mentions that coming up with the name The Shade Room, she's not sure how she came up with it. She just came up with it and ran with it. So then she decided to blog straight on Instagram, because at the time, no other, platforms on Instagram or on social media were really blogging in that kind of fashion. And she didn't know how to start a website. She didn't have any of those coding skills or any UX skills to be able to start her own website. So she decided to just blog straight on Instagram. So her idea that she just fostered because of her love for talking about the media and not knowing how to build a website grew the Shade Room to 10,000 followers in the first week. She says that it was a mix of perfect timing, a great name, and just a great brand. But then once the Shade Room hit 500,000 followers, Instagram took them down. And she said that this was really devastating because, you know, she experienced so much quick growth, and she was thinking, how in the heck am I going to be able to meet what I was at before, you know, and it happened so fast, which really wasn't as common at the time. So she decided to start another page, and what happened was CNN actually linked the Shade Room in one of their articles. And so CNN was kind of doing a piece on why it's bad to do Instagram blogging, you know, why this isn't a good idea, and kind of using the Shade Room as an example because IG took them down. But it actually ended up working in the Shade Room's favor because that article brought so much more traffic to the new page. So people started Googling the new page. People are like, oh my goodness, Instagram took this page down. Why did they do that? Blah, blah, blah. So it really fostered curiosity in people, and it drove a lot of traffic to her new page. Then in 6 months, the Shade Room grew to 1 million followers. So again, the Shade Room has been incredibly influential, has been cited by tons and tons of celebrities, even the former president Barack Obama. So if you're unclear still on what the Shade Room is and what it does, it provides instant media coverage on basically all kinds of celebrity news stories and celebrity tea. And the Shade Room has a focus on discussing topics in the Black community, which has been met with a lot of controversy, and people in general find the Shade Room to be a very negative platform, and I'm going to get more into that. In general, I just feel like the Shade Room has the power to really influence public opinion. I mean, because the Shade Room has such a strong following and such a strong community base, you know, anything that's posted, I feel like whatever the consensus in the comments are, that's what the internet seems to go to. Like, this is the consensus on this certain issue or this certain celebrity. I think a great example of that was the Khloe Kardashian and the Tristan Thompson drama. You know, all of that was constantly put on the Shade Room, and so people had their opinions on Khloe, on Tristan, on Jordan, that whole situation. And, you know, people were so abreast on the topic because the Shade Room was constantly posting about it. Or at least one of the reasons why. There's also, you know, a lot of different opinions on celebrity relationships, like Cardi B and Offset's relationships, so much so that Cardi B has accused the Shade Room of being biased against her, so we're going to talk more about that. Then there was Meg Thee Stallion and Tory Lanez, and I think that one especially, like that case especially, you know, given the fact that that happened during the pandemic and we were all just sitting at home and the Shade Room was posting around the clock updates and like the snippets of the lives and everything like that, like people were just constantly consumed by these stories, and, you know, word spread and people just state their opinion. So, you know, I think the Shade Room has a huge influence on how people think and how a lot of people get their news, because a lot of people will get their news from the Shade Room or, you know, Instagram blogs, you know, instead of looking it up themselves, which we're going to get more into the whole media literacy thing. So for a second, I want to pivot and talk more about the positive impacts of the Shade Room. I don't want this to be like a slander video and just, oh my gosh, the Shade Room is horrible. Even though I really don't like the Shade Room, I still want to, you know, talk about some of the good things they've done that people may not know about. So some positive impacts of a blog like the Shade Room is simply just representation. At the end of the day, this is Black media and, you know, putting Black voices out there, even though majority of the representation is pretty negative. The few positive ones they put in there, you know, they do platform some positive people from time to time. So in general, having a blog where Black people can just talk about things going on in the community, they offer a space for that, even though still ain't the greatest space. But, you know, anyway, let me keep going. So they have things like the Shade Room morning inspiration, the Shade Room positive images. You know, they try to put some type of positivity in there from time to time. And that really is because of Angelica's convictions. I guess her feeling of like, you know, I don't want this to be just a messy blog. I want to try to instill some positivity and even some faith, because Angelica is a Christian. She identifies as a Christian woman. And so she wants to put some of that influence in there. The only thing is, I'm just going to give my opinion real quick. I understand that, but I also feel like it looks incredibly hypocritical when you're posting about debauchery and you're posting about all this mess and drama in the Black community, but then you want to foster some positivity. It kind of sounds like, what's that word? What is like where, why can't I think of the word? It's literally like when you have a belief and then it's contradictory. Why can't I remember it? Okay, anyway. Let's keep going. I'm gonna put it on the screen because that's sad. How can I not remember? Okay, so one positive impact they really have had on colleges is they have a 4-year scholarship to LMU, Angelica's alma mater, and Virginia State, and a couple other universities. And so they said that as long as these universities are standing, they're going to keep offering these scholarship opportunities. So they make sure that they can offer these opportunities to several students every school year, which, you know, is good. It's, you know, giving back and putting back into the community. She also mentions that they give 10% of their profit back to the Black community. So she really discusses how they really try to put at least 10% of their income back into the community, back into different causes. I think they support a cause for disadvantaged women in the prison system. They do other kinds of charity efforts. So Angelica doesn't want people thinking that she just kind of pockets the money and runs away. You know, she tries to invest back into the community. Angelica also said that when you're reporting on culture, you have to report the good, the bad, the ups and the downs. Like when you're reporting on a culture, you can't just report always on the good. People need to see the bad, you know, people need to see the reflections of themselves. But I guess my issue with that stance is the fact that these are celebrities. Most of the people they report on are celebrities. And I don't think any of these celebrities, good or bad, represent me. They don't represent me or, you know, my fellow like Black friends, you know, like they don't really represent me. And, you know, there's people out there that think that these celebrities represent me and they represent the community. And that's really not the case. These are celebrities. These people got their own status and bank account, you know, like they got a whole different status, a whole different level of fame and money and everything like that and access. So do they really speak for me or represent me? I don't think so.
Because we are so marginalized and because we don't have a lot of representation, we begin to feel so much ownership over the representation that is out there. And we don't want to see bad things. You know what I mean? Because we're like, oh, we're already seeing the bad light. We don't want to see bad things. But the reality is, if you're reporting on a culture, you're not just reporting on the positivity of that culture. You're reporting on everything. That means the bad, the good.
And I think another question too is that, is it the followers' fault that, you know, that they are indulging in mess? Is it the followers' fault that these celebrities indulge in mess and then they platform this mess? I also want to add that according to Angelica, over 400 Black businesses have been able to get their start from being featured on the Shade Room. So she's really helped a lot of Black-owned businesses get their footing and get their start and, you know, be successful. So now I'm going to talk more about the negative impacts. I know I gave a lot of my opinions and kind of like contradictory stances, but now I'm going to get more into the negative impacts. So the most obvious one is just gossip and sensationalism. The Shade Room, I think, is a blog that a lot of times will prioritize getting clicks and getting numbers over factual reporting. For example, they made a post a few years ago insinuating that Chris Brown and Karrueche Tran were back together. And so they were pictured at Six Flags. They were leaving. And basically Karrueche commented that there was an event at Six Flags for Space Jam and there was a ton of other people there next. So basically saying like, don't insinuate that we're back together or that we're talking. We just happened to be at the same place at the same time and get photographed, but we were not together. We didn't come together, you know? They also were called out by Keith Lee. Keith Lee last year really called out the Shade Room because he feels like the Shade Room will really only post him when it's stuff that garners controversy, like when, you know, when he's crying. And there was also a post where Keith Lee's wife bought him a new car. And a lot of the commentators were saying that, oh, she's a gold digger. She's just using his money to buy the car. And he said that a lot of these comments, you know, a lot of these posts that the Shade Room would post would get people to question his sexuality, you know, question his relationship and his marriage. So he just went off on the Shade Room.
Shade Room, we've been blessed enough to be the marketing platform for restaurants all over the country, but absolutely no charge to these restaurants, including Detroit, Chicago, Miami, New Orleans, Vegas, and many more to come if we're blessed to do that. My family and my community have also been blessed enough to raise over $30,000 for a restaurant owner who has cancer. Not to mention other 1,000 incredible things we've been blessed enough to do. But yet, the only 2 times we've ever posted me and my family were videos of me crying with little to no context. To your community who draw their own context with no context.
Granted, they have posted this before when I was doing Ronnie's pregnancy cravings and when I was cooking, but I'm being very specific to this last year since I started doing food reviews.
This has sparked multiple conversations of not only my sexuality, but also outrageous questions about who bought the car that my wife got me for my birthday.
Before, some people try to gaslight me, saying I shouldn't be surprised that my wife got me a car because she bought the gift with my money and she spent my money and she a gold digger. It's very demeaning to my wife and myself. Podcast watching is crazy. Let's be honest. You don't know where my wife money come from. My wife is blessed enough to do really well. Relax.
Y'all can talk about me all y'all want. That don't bother me none. When y'all start demeaning my wife and my family, that's where I draw the line.
I've been very clear and transparent about the fact that I have imposter syndrome and I don't really know how to accept gifts. I've never known how to accept gifts. I barely know how to accept where I am in life. I just be vibing, eating food, minding my business, staying by my family. All of this is different to me. All of this is an adjustment period. I just be chilling. I really do. And yes, I'm very in touch with my emotions. If that makes me less manly in your eyes, that's your opinion, I'm completely fine with that. Again, y'all don't bother me none. Just leave my wife alone. That's all I ask.
And I want to be very clear with my words. I'm not saying Shade Room was wrong for posting. I just like to think we've been blessed with a lot more material that can be used. Just 2 weeks ago, during Hispanic Pride Month, we completely bought out a random ice cream vendor and passed out the ice cream for free. In my eyes, that's worthy to post, and that's all I'm saying. God bless you. Have an amazing day. Y'all be safe. Come to me all you want. Leave her out of it. We just be eating food, praying, staying together, and chilling. We don't bother nobody.
And I think that is very common on the Shade Room. You'll see the Shade Room post celebrities in specific situations. It'll be specific posts they make, specific tweets they make that you know will incite a lot of discourse, a lot of comments, a lot of negativity, a lot of, just like hurling a whole bunch of stuff, whether good or bad at the celebrity. They'll really post a lot of things to incite, a lot of different commentary and a lot of discourse. And they do that to a lot of different celebrities. So
someone said they got y'all live on the Shade Room. Oh.
Oh, Lord.
For real?
What did we say? We didn't say nothing. Well, hello, Shade Room. They always trying to start stuff. Listen.
Tea time wouldn't be tea time without any fun stuff. So
yes.
This is the circle, everybody.
This is the circle.
This is the circle.
Everybody gets to talk about their relationship experience and receive advice from us.
Yes.
We love y'all.
It's honestly, like, I totally understood Keith Lee. I feel like people come for Keith a lot. People come for Keith a lot when all he wants to do is just eat food, and, do things that he feels are important to him and brings him joy, so, he's calling them out saying, like, you're only posting in these instances and then you're getting your fans and your followers to say all this stuff about me. Another thing that I really don't like that the Shade Room does is they will post people's children. They will post celebrities' children. I mean, they'll post Beyonce, Blue Ivy, they'll post Kim Kardashian's children, they'll post Dwayne Wade's children. Like, they're always posting people's kids, and people are commenting on these, a lot of times, minors. These people are minors. These children are minors. Most of them are not even old enough to actually post on social media anyway. And so it's like, all these people are commenting and saying this about their features. And I feel like children should be off limits, It's like, why are we even posting? And I get that these celebrities post their children, so they end up getting, platforms. And I really think that people shouldn't be posting their kids on social media or posting them to a minimum, and I get that that's what the celebrities are doing, but why is a big platform then posting them knowing that people are going to have all kinds of opinions on a child? Then I want to briefly get into the Cardi B drama. So I'm not going to go too in depth with everything with Cardi B, but basically the Shade Room posted Cardi B's child, posted culture for her birthday, and Cardi said, take this post down. And basically Cardi said that, the Shade Room blocked me from putting comments, so I had to send a DM. And, Cardi has come at the Shade Room multiple times throughout the years, saying that they only post her in a negative light. And, they were basically going back and forth on Twitter. Angelica, who, again, is the founder of the Shade Room that I discussed earlier, started going back and forth with Cardi on Twitter and saying, if you have video evidence, I guess like a recording of the phone call we had, post it. We also have a recording and we'll post it too. And it was weird because the Shade Room never posted their evidence of a phone conversation that Cardi had with them about these issues. They just were saying, like, oh, post yours first. And it's like, if you have evidence, then why not just post it? But anyway, basically, Angelica was going back and forth with Cardi. And I just thought it was really, I remember at the time thinking it was really tacky because, I feel like the Shade Room tries to report itself as this very professional media outlet, yet and still you're posting or you're going back and forth with celebrity on a public platform. And I feel like that's just, even though Cardi, like, honestly, we know Cardi will be flying off the handle. She posts all kinds of stuff. She has no type of restraint at all. She just says whatever is crazy. But I feel like, as a media platform, you should exhibit a level of professionalism. And so that was just like, I don't know, that was just tacky. What's even crazier about it too is that Cardi actually did post receipts and she was blocked because when she would comment, a lot of like her comments would not get any interactions. They wouldn't get any likes, they wouldn't get any replies. And Cardi has a huge fan base. Anytime Cardi or any celebrity comments, you'll see people liking and replying under the comment, but with Cardi it'd be nothing. And so she posted proof of that. So it did make the Shade Room look pretty guilty in that regard. Now I want to discuss more of the mental health effects of a platform like the Shade Room. And I think it's because The Shade Room is such an instantaneous media outlet, and so it's so easy to get hooked on their page. I remember when I first followed the Shade Room, I think in 2016 or 2017. I think I was like a freshman in college back then. And I remember how often they were posting. I was like, oh my gosh, like I remember checking their page, and then I went back like maybe 30 minutes later and they had like 4 to 6 new posts. And I was like, oh my goodness, they're constantly posting. So the Shade Room is a very instantaneous media outlet, and they're constantly posting a lot of this negativity. And I feel like that can have a really horrible effect on the readers. You know, it can have a really horrible effect on the person reading and people that are being posted. You know, I think it can really sow negative perspectives of just the Black community, you know, can sow that in its readers as well as people outside. And again, like my stance again is just the fact that these celebrities should not be your representation. I understand it's important in like different media like TV and like books or whatever to see people that look like you, of course. But I feel like for a celebrity's regular life, you know, they shouldn't be a representation. They're completely different. They're living a completely different lifestyle, having completely different access than you. And so they shouldn't be your measure of representation. You know, they don't speak for you. So I think that, you know, when you're constantly seeing stuff like that, it can start warping how you view, possibly, you know, how you view your own people, which is really crazy. And so I think that's some effects that it can have. The community in the Shade Room is always commenting on this mess in tea, and you'll see all kinds of like colorism, racism, ageism, all the isms and the is, you know what I mean, in the comment section. And it's just like, that's not healthy for somebody to be consuming on a daily basis. So as I've kept touching on, I've talked a lot about the negative, you know, perspectives and stereotypes that a platform like the Shade Room likes to platform, but I really want to talk about like, you know, specific people. So the most annoying couple that the Shade Room was posting, it felt like they were posting them back to back to back to back to back, was Krishan and Blueface. And Krishan and Blueface are the biggest dumpster fire ever. I don't even want to get into detail of just how messy they are. You know, Krishan was once a really promising athlete. She was a really, you know, promising athlete, was doing really well in university. And then she got on this show that I guess Blueface, who's a struggle rapper, you know, had produced and made. And then they became a couple, and they were always fighting on social media, always going back and forth, you know, always going at each other on live. You know, their fights were being filmed. You know, Blueface is very disrespectful towards any woman. He doesn't even respect like his own family. Just a whole mess. Even Krishan, like while she was pregnant, you know, it was alleged that she was drinking while pregnant. And so just a whole lot of stuff that they would platform. And it felt like the Shade Room was just posting them constantly, back to back to back to back to back. You saw them posting this, and it was almost like they were, you know, romanticizing it. They'd ask people like, oh, roomies, who they call their fan base the roommates, right? Roomies, what do you guys think? And it's like, what do we think? Like, it's so obviously toxic and disgusting, and it seems like you're romanticizing it and giving it such energy and such ammo. It's ridiculous. It's like, it's literally like the Shade Room became the Blue Sean Room at one point. And I just couldn't stand it. I was like, this is crazy that they're platforming this. And again, like I said, these celebrities don't speak for me, but you have a lot of people that will still look at celebrities like they're their voice, like they're their representation. And then people outside of the community, unfortunately, people really are that airheaded. They'll literally look at people in the community and think that, oh, this is how Black people act, this is this and that, you know? And it's like, why would you want to help platform that? You know, as the creator, why would you want to help platform that? You say that we need to see the good and the bad, but the bad is mostly what we see. I then want to address ethical concerns. And so just, you know, situations where I feel like the Shade Room will post misinformation, but then there's a lack of accountability being done about these continual streams of misinformation. So in 2022, the Shade Room made a post about Joe Biden approving a $30 million plan to distribute crack pipes as a health equity measure. And then the Biden administration called out the Shade Room, calling its claims misleading and misinformed. And what Biden was actually announcing was a harm reduction program to reduce drug overdoses and prevent the spread of infectious diseases. And so regardless of where you lean politically, regardless of what your political, you know, ideals are, I think facts need to be shown. Like, facts need to be put and not spinning headlines. Like, especially for a blog and a platform like the Shade Room that has so much influence, that has so much power, why are you manipulating and twisting these kinds of stories? Like, you should be giving the facts regardless of what you at the top, regardless of what these employees think. Just post the facts, you know what I mean? They were also called out by a TikToker named Joshua Joseph for misinformation on the Maui wildfires. Basically, the way they framed their post was that the administration was only sending $700 to support those that were displaced by the fires, which was untrue. They were actually sending a lot of different packages to help people. They were adding a lot of different resources and supplies for people being displaced. And Joshua went on his TikTok to debunk that. You had a lot of other people as well calling out the Shade Room for posting that misinformation. And so it became a whole thing. Like, there was a whole rabbit hole that Joshua got into. Basically, the Shade Room came back at him and said, oh, well, we were actually posting about this. We did post the full story, but then he kind of was able to see that there was a manipulation, or all of these things. So again, multiple instances of the Shade Room, posting misinformation and then being called out on it. Then there was another instance with 50 Cent, actually. So 50 Cent actually sued the Shade Room. And so he sued the Shade Room because he was put in an article about getting penis enlargement surgery. So it's kind of a crazy story. He sued them for implying that he got penis enlargement surgery. So he took a photo with a Florida plastic surgeon named Angela Kogan, and it was used in an article that the Shade Room wrote about celebrities getting penis enlargement surgery. So they reached a settlement, and then the Shade Room deleted the post. So, again, there's so many more examples. I feel like, you just go on the Shade Room, you could probably find like 3 to 4 examples, like just scrolling right now on there. But those are just a few that I wanted to call out and talk about. Again, the fact that there is just this need to want to sensationalize, and it's very strange given the fact that Angelica speaks again about wanting to put positivity on the platform, but then also allowing stuff like this, or the staff to allow stuff like this to be posted. It just makes you wonder, like, where are your ethics and integrity really lying, This then also brings me to critical thinking, just discussing critical thinking in general. Thinking critically about the content you consume. Don't just read a headline and then run with it. Like, don't allow your emotions to get so wrapped up in different headlines you read, or, a snippet of a story, and then you run with it. Really try to dissect. I know that it's not something that comes super naturally to us, especially when we're constantly scrolling and we're getting inundated with instantaneous information. But I think taking the extra few seconds to really dive into a story and get a formulated opinion that is not formed by the peanut gallery, I think that would do wonders for how we disseminate information and how people intake information and what their perceptions of them are. And I think that really eliminates stuff like groupthink and, just this hive mentality that can really arise on social media a lot just because of initial thoughts or emotions on a story. I think it's also critical to question the sources that you're reading and question the motive behind their stories. A lot of blogs, like the Shade Room, I have to be honest, from what I've seen, they'll post content that seems unbiased, but really it has a stance or a bias behind it. And I think it's important to at least be aware of it. It's one thing if you still consume it despite knowing the bias, but at least you're aware, versus somebody who just consumes it blindly. So don't be a blind consumer of certain content. Don't be a blind consumer of different media, regardless of what their stances are. I also think diverse sources are very important. So to be honest, most news sources are incredibly biased and are trying to get a rise out of you or get you to think one way or the other. That's just how it is. That's just the truth. Journalism, unfortunately, is not how it used to be back in like the 60s, 50s or whatever, where it seemed a bit more objective and straightforward. But that's why I think it's important to get some news from a multitude of sources. Different sources like the Associated Press, BBC, The Guardian, they're going to kind of give you more news that's more straightforward. I feel like they're not going to give as much of an opinion on something. They're going to kind of just tell it to you straight. And again, that's not something that we necessarily like. That doesn't tickle our curiosity, tickle our dopamine or whatever. But at least you're getting the story as unbiased as possible versus getting a story that's twisted and manipulated to get you to feel a certain way or think a certain way. I also think it's important to fact check, like just go through fact checking channels and mediums for different articles or things you're consuming. I found a site called Media Bias / Fact Check News. And it kind of goes through different media channels and gives you as much bias as possible. Like, how biased is this article or this platform? How objective is it? And I think that's also important if you take that extra step when consuming different media. And like I said, I think it's natural as humans for us to be interested in mess, gossip, tea. That is completely understandable because that's what we unfortunately like to see. But I think it's very important to be mindful of how much you're consuming and maybe put some limits on apps that you're looking at too much gossip or tea or sites, you know, put limits or even block them, just straight up block them. I've seen so many people block the Shade Room. So many people have just blocked the Shade Room because they're tired of them. And I think that's something that's really important to do, you know, figure out, okay, what am I doing? Am I being mindful about what I'm consuming? Am I letting it overtake me? Am I constantly wasting time consuming negativity? You know, ask yourself those real questions, and you know, hopefully you can find a method and find new sources, find ways to still get your information without being obsessed or hooked on negativity. So that is my video. That is my thoughts on the Shade Room. I feel like there's so much that could be said. You know, I really want y'all to comment below about, you know, the Shade Room and the platform. There's so much more that can be said about the kind of stories they post and the negativity and all things like that. So I'm just really curious on what you guys think about these kinds of platforms. What do you think just in general about media literacy and journalism? And do you feel like journalism is what it used to be? Or what are your thoughts on how the digital landscape has changed how we consume media? So thank you guys so much for watching this video. I really hope you enjoyed my analysis of the Shade Room and these black blogs. And again, be careful what you're consuming, okay? Be careful, and hopefully we'll be happier. So thank you guys so much for watching this video, and I'll talk to y'all next time. Bye!